Have you ever looked into your mother's eyes and felt like she wasn't the same person anymore? Imagine the woman who raised you suddenly becoming your worst nightmare. Tonight, we dive into 12 terrifying true psycho mom horror stories, including the chilling tale of the night my mom changed. These are not just stories. They are real accounts that will haunt your mind long after the video ends. If you're brave enough to face the darkness, make sure to hit that subscribe button to Bleeding Walls and join us for more spine-chilling true horror every week. Your next nightmare begins here. I was 14 the night everything changed. Until then, my life had been unremarkable, maybe even painfully ordinary. We lived in a modest 2-story house on the edge of town, surrounded by pine trees that always seemed to whisper when the wind moved through them. My dad worked long hours at the mill, and my mom stayed home with me and my younger brother, Tyler. She wasn't perfect. No mother is. But she was the center of our lives, the one who made sure the house smelled like cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings and tucked us in with stories when storms rattled the windows. But on the night my mom changed, it felt as if the entire foundation of my world cracked in half. It started quietly. I had gone to bed around 10 p.m., headphones in, drifting off to a playlist of soft rock. At first, I thought the noise I heard was just part of the song, some distorted guitar riff bleeding into static. But then I realized the sound wasn't in my ears at all. It was coming from the hallway. A low, steady humming. Not cheerful humming, but something eerie, off-key, almost like a chant. I pulled out my earbuds and sat up in bed. Tyler was asleep in the bunk above mine, breathing deeply. I didn't want to wake him, but the sound was getting louder. My stomach twisted. When I opened my door and peeked out, the hallway was dark except for a faint glow spilling out from the kitchen. That was where the humming came from. I padded down the hall, my bare feet cold against the wood floor, and as I got closer, I realized it wasn't humming after all. It was words. Soft, broken words spilling from my mother's mouth. She was standing in the kitchen, facing the counter, her hair hanging loose and tangled around her face. The overhead light flickered, buzzing faintly. On the counter lay a cutting board, and next to it, the largest knife we owned. I froze in the doorway, my breath caught in my chest. "Mom!" My voice cracked, almost too quiet to hear. Her head jerked slightly, but she didn't turn around. Her shoulders rose and fell as though she was breathing too fast, too shallow. Then she whispered something that made the hair on my arms prickle. "He's inside. He's inside. He's inside." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but my throat closed. Who was inside? Dad wasn't home yet. He worked the late shift. Tyler was asleep upstairs. It was just me, her, and the shadows pressing in from the edges of the kitchen. I took one cautious step forward. The floor creaked. That's when she turned around. Her face looked wrong. Pale, her eyes wide and unblinking, pupils dilated so much they looked almost black. Her lips trembled as though she had been crying, but her cheeks were dry, and in her hand she held the knife. "Mom!" I started, but she cut me off with a hiss, a sound I had never heard come from her before. "Don't." Her voice was sharp, jagged. "Don't you come closer. He's in you. I can see him." My heart pounded. "Mom, it's me. It's Jacob." She shook her head violently, the knife trembling in her grip. "You're not Jacob. He's in you. I know it. You think I don't see, but I do." I backed away slowly, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to run upstairs, grab Tyler, and lock the door. Another part of me wanted to scream for Dad, though he wouldn't be home for hours. And another, deeper part of me, the one that had loved her laughter, her hugs, her stories, wanted to believe this was just a nightmare I would soon wake from. But it wasn't. She lunged forward suddenly, the knife flashing in the dim light. I stumbled backward, slamming into the fridge. My hands went up instinctively, but she stopped just short of me, the tip of the blade hovering inches from my chest. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her eyes darting back and forth as though she were fighting something inside her. "Please," I whispered. "Mom, it's me. It's really me." For a moment, her expression softened. Her lips quivered, and I thought I saw recognition flicker across her face. But then her gaze hardened again, and she whispered through clenched teeth, "He wants me to hurt you." My stomach dropped. I didn't know who he was, but I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. Whoever she thought he was, she believed he was real. The next few minutes blurred together in fragments of terror. I managed to push past her and run down the hall, my heart hammering in my chest. She chased me, her footsteps pounding the floor like drum beats. I scrambled upstairs, nearly tripping, and burst into the bedroom. Tyler stirred as I slammed the door shut and pressed my weight against it. "What's going on?" Tyler mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Stay in bed," I hissed. My voice cracked with panic. "Don't move." The doorknob rattled. Then came the sound of the blade scratching against the wood. My mother's voice seeped through the thin barrier, chilling and sing-song. "Let me in, Jacob. Let me in. I need to cut him out of you." Tyler's eyes went wide. He scrambled down from the top bunk, clinging to me, his small body trembling. I didn't know what to do. We didn't have a lock on the door. My weight wouldn't hold her back forever. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the noise stopped, the scratching, the rattling, the voice. Silence pressed in around us. We stayed huddled together for what felt like an eternity, neither of us daring to move. My ears strained for any sound, the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of her breath, but there was nothing. When I finally worked up the courage to open the door a crack, the hallway was empty. She was gone. The next hour was a blur of whispered arguments and terrified waiting. Tyler wanted to run outside, but I was too afraid she'd be lurking in the dark. We sat there, clutching each other, until finally we heard the familiar rumble of Dad's truck pulling into the driveway. Relief flooded me, but it was quickly swallowed by dread, because I had no idea how to explain what had just happened. When Dad came inside, we rushed to him, babbling over each other about Mom, the knife, the chanting. His face paled, and without a word, he went to the kitchen. She was sitting there at the table, the knife lying harmlessly beside her. Her eyes were red, and she looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. When Dad asked her what had happened, she just shook her head and whispered, "He's inside them. He wants them." That night ended with an ambulance, flashing red and blue lights painting the walls of our house. 2 men in uniforms guided her out, gently but firmly, while she screamed that they were making a mistake, that they weren't saving us, they were delivering us. It's been years since then, but I still remember the look in her eyes, that mixture of love and madness, that sense that she truly believed she was protecting us from something invisible, something only she could see. And sometimes, when the wind rattles the pine trees outside my window, I think about her words, about the way she whispered them over and over like a prayer. "He's inside. He's inside. He's inside." I tell myself it was just her illness, just a crack in her mind that let the darkness in. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, I can't shake the feeling that maybe she wasn't entirely wrong. Because sometimes, when I look at my reflection in the mirror, I swear I see something else staring back at me. My mother always told me never to open the basement door after dark. As a child, I thought it was just another one of her strange rules, like not leaving shoes upside down or never sleeping with mirrors uncovered. She was always a little intense, superstitious. She said things her own mother had taught her, old whispers passed down like family heirlooms. I laughed it off most of the time, but there was something about the way she looked at that basement door that made me uneasy. It wasn't just caution in her eyes. It was fear, We lived in a century-old farmhouse, its bones creaking with every gust of wind, the walls groaning at night as if they remembered too much. The basement was the worst part of it. A long, narrow set of stairs, leading down into a black pit that smelled of damp earth and rust. My dad never went down there either, not even to change a fuse. "Your mother handles the basement," he'd say, and that was that. For most of my childhood, I listened to her rule. I avoided the door after dark. But as I got older, 14, 15, I grew curious. Why was she so obsessed with it? Why did she sometimes sit in the kitchen, staring at the door for hours, as if listening? Once, when I asked her directly, she snapped at me so sharply I didn't dare press further. "Don't ever ask about it again," she hissed. Her hands trembled as though the very question had pulled something dangerous closer. The night it all began, my dad was working late and my mom was unusually quiet. Tyler, my little brother, was asleep upstairs. I was in the living room when I heard it, a faint tapping sound. I muted the TV, straining to listen. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the basement door. At first I thought it was just the pipes, but the sound grew sharper, deliberate, like fingers drumming against wood. My skin crawled. I turned my head, and that's when I saw my mom. She was standing in the hallway, staring at the basement door with wide, unblinking eyes. Her face looked pale, almost waxy in the dim light. "Don't answer it," she whispered. "What do you mean?" My voice was barely a breath. She didn't move her eyes from the door. "He wants you to open it. He knows you're listening." A chill spread through me. "Who?" Finally, she turned to look at me. There was something wild in her eyes, something that made me take a step back. "Don't you understand? Your grandfather. He never left. He's still down there, and if you open that door, he'll come for you too." I swallowed hard. I'd never met my grandfather. He died long before I was born. Or at least, that was what I had always been told. "Mom," I said carefully, "Grandpa's gone." Her lips curled into a strange smile. "That's what they want you to think. But he lives in the dark. He lives in the basement." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was being ridiculous, but the tapping came again. Louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. My chest tightened. That night, I went to bed with the sound echoing in my ears, but sometime around 3 a.m., I woke to the creak of hinges. I sat up, heart pounding. The sound had come from the hallway, from the basement door. I tiptoed out of bed, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. The house was silent except for the steady tick of the clock. When I reached the hallway, my stomach dropped. The basement door was open. Cold air seeped out, carrying the smell of damp earth. The stairwell yawned like an open mouth. And at the bottom of the stairs, in the darkness, something moved. A shape, a man's silhouette. I froze, unable to breathe. My mind screamed that it was impossible, that no one could be down there. But then it spoke, and the voice slithered up the stairs like smoke. "Jacob, come help me." The voice was raspy, strained but familiar in a way that sent my skin crawling. I had never heard my grandfather's voice before, but deep down I knew. I just knew. I stumbled back, nearly tripping, but then I felt a hand grip my shoulder. I spun around and nearly screamed, but it was my mother. Her face was pale, her eyes wild. She put a finger to her lips, hissing for silence. "Don't look at him," she whispered. "Don't answer him. If you answer him, he'll know you belong to him." I stared at her, trembling. "What's happening? What is he?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I tried to keep you safe. I tried. But he wants you now. He always wanted the firstborn." Before I could respond, the voice came again, louder, more insistent. "Jacob, I need you. Why are you hiding? Don't you love your grandfather?" The words twisted in my ears. For a second, I almost felt compelled to step forward, to answer him, but my mother grabbed my wrist so tightly it hurt, dragging me backward toward my room. We locked ourselves inside. Tyler was still asleep, oblivious to everything. My mother and I sat there in silence, her hand clamped over my mouth as the sound of slow, heavy footsteps creaked on the stairs outside. They climbed one step, then another, then another. Each groan of wood under unseen weight drove me closer to madness. The steps paused right outside my door. My mother's hand trembled against my lips. "Jacob," the voice crooned inches away. "Open the door, boy. Open it for me. I've missed you." I don't remember much after that. I think I passed out from terror because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. The sunlight streamed in, and the house was silent again. The basement door was closed. When I asked my mom about it later, she pretended nothing had happened. She acted normal, cooking breakfast, humming to herself as if the night had been a bad dream. When I pressed her, she gave me a look that froze my blood. "You're safer if you don't talk about it," she said. After that night, things got worse. She became more paranoid. She boarded up the basement door, nailed it shut, but sometimes at night I still heard the tapping. Sometimes I heard his voice calling for me. And once, only once, I swore I saw her talking back, whispering to the closed door, her face pale and haunted as though she was bargaining with him. I never opened the basement. I never answered his calls. But I live with the knowledge that he's still there, waiting. And I live with the knowledge that my mother might not always be strong enough to keep him out. Because sometimes, when she looks at me, there's something in her eyes that doesn't belong to her something old, something hungry. And I wonder if maybe he's not trapped in the basement anymore. Maybe he's already inside her. My mother had a strange obsession with mirrors. When I was little, I thought it was just one of her quirks. She kept them covered most of the time, draped with white sheets or turned to face the walls. I grew up in a house where reflections were a forbidden thing, where the only mirror I ever saw uncovered was the tiny bathroom one she couldn't live without. I never questioned it much. It was just one of those unspoken rules of our household, like not leaving your plate on the table overnight or never ever going into her bedroom without permission. She called it keeping the glass asleep. That was how she explained it when I asked her once. I must have been 8 or 9. "If you wake the glass," she whispered, her voice trembling, "it will wake what lives inside it." Her eyes darted nervously toward the mirror in the bathroom, as though even mentioning it was dangerous. I laughed it off. I was just a kid, and kids don't believe in curses or old wives' tales. But everything changed one summer night when I was 16. It started with an argument. She was always strict, but by then I was too old to be treated like a child. I wanted to go to a party, and she refused. "You don't understand what's out there," she snapped. "You think the world is safe, but it isn't. The danger isn't outside, it's in here, in this house." I rolled my eyes and shouted back, slamming my bedroom door. She screamed at me not to close it like that I was inviting something in. It was the kind of fight teenagers have with their moms every day, but that night it went too far. She stormed into my room after midnight, her face pale and sweaty, her eyes wide like she hadn't slept in days. She carried something wrapped in a sheet. She dropped it on the floor and the sheet fell away to reveal a mirror. It was old, its frame carved with strange patterns I didn't recognize, its glass clouded with age. I'd never seen it before. My skin prickled as I looked at it. Something about it felt wrong, as though the air around it bent differently. "You don't believe me," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You think I'm crazy, but tonight you'll see. Tonight you'll play the game." I tried to laugh it off, but the intensity in her eyes rooted me in place. "What game?" I asked cautiously. "The mirror game," she said. "You sit in front of it at midnight and you ask it to show you what's inside. If it answers, you'll never laugh at me again." I shook my head. "Mom, this is insane." Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. Her nails dug into my skin, and her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Midnight. Don't disobey me." When the clock struck 12, she made me sit cross-legged in front of the mirror. She sat behind me, her hands on my shoulders, trembling. The room was dark except for a single candle. The flame flickered in the glass, and I swear the reflection didn't match the way it moved in real life. "Say it," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Say what?" "Ask it to wake up." I wanted to run. Every instinct told me to bolt, to push the mirror over, to never look at it again. But her grip tightened on my shoulders, and something in her tone told me I didn't have a choice. "Wake up," I whispered. At first, nothing happened. I stared into the cloudy glass, my own pale reflection staring back. I almost laughed with relief, until the reflection blinked. I hadn't blinked. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring as the figure in the glass slowly curled its lips into a smile. My face, my eyes, but not my expression. "Do you see?" My mother hissed behind me, her breath hot against my ear. "Do you see what lives in the glass?" My throat went dry. "It's just a trick," I whispered, though I didn't believe it. The reflection raised its hand slowly, deliberately. Mine stayed in my lap. Its hand pressed against the inside of the glass, palm out, as though it wanted me to match it. "Touch it," my mother commanded. I shook my head violently. "No." Her fingers dug into my shoulders. "Touch it. If you don't, it'll come anyway. Better to greet it than anger it." My hand shook as I raised it, hovering just inches from the cold glass. The reflection's smile widened, showing too many teeth. Just before I touched it, I pulled away. The mirror shuddered. Not the frame, the glass itself rippling like water. The candle flickered wildly, and the room seemed to tilt. My mother screamed and shoved me back. "You woke it!" she cried. "You were supposed to finish it, not run." The glass rippled again, and then a sound came from it. A low, guttural laugh that didn't belong to me or anyone I knew. It seeped into the air, vibrating through my bones. I bolted to my bed, clutching the blanket like it could shield me. My mom didn't follow. She stayed kneeling in front of the mirror, whispering frantic words I couldn't understand. For the next few days, the house changed. The mirrors we had covered seemed to breathe. The sheets covering them fluttered as if stirred by a hidden wind. Sometimes, when I walked by, I saw shapes moving beneath the covers. Shapes that weren't me. My mother. She became obsessed. She barely ate, barely slept, sitting for hours in front of that mirror she'd brought into my room. She talked to it, whispered secrets, laughed at things no one else could hear. Once, I swear I saw her reflection keep talking after she turned away. The worst was the night I woke to find her standing over me, a pair of scissors in her hand. Her eyes were wide, her lips trembling. "He wants a piece," she whispered. "Just a piece, Jacob, then he'll leave us alone." I screamed, scrambling away, and she dropped the scissors like they had burned her. She clutched her head, sobbing, muttering apologies over and over, but even then, I knew she wasn't apologizing to me. She was apologizing to the thing in the glass. I begged my dad to take me and Tyler away, but he just shook his head, weary and broken. "Your mother isn't well," he said. "We need to be patient." But patience wasn't enough. 2 weeks later, I woke in the middle of the night to a sound that still haunts me. Glass breaking. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw that the old mirror had shattered across the floor. My mom was kneeling among the shards, bleeding from her hands, her face lit with wild joy. "He's here," she whispered. "He's free now." And then she laughed, a laugh that wasn't hers at all. The shards on the floor reflected 100 versions of me, but none of them matched. Some smiled, some scowled. One of them turned its head when I didn't. I ran from that house that night and never looked back. My dad took Tyler and me away the next day after he found Mom rocking back and forth in the broken glass, humming to her reflection. They say she's still in that house, years later, talking to mirrors that aren't there. But sometimes, when I catch my own reflection in a window or a dark screen, I swear it lingers a second too long after I've moved. And I wonder if, maybe, just maybe, the glass isn't asleep anymore. Every family has a room you're not supposed to go into. For us, it was the one at the end of the upstairs hallway. The door with the old brass knob and the lock that was always bolted from the outside. My mother called it the sewing room, though I never once saw her sew. In fact, I never saw her go inside at all, though sometimes I would catch her standing there late at night, her ear pressed to the wood, whispering to herself. When I was younger, I asked her why the room was always locked. She looked at me with that sharp, warning glare that could cut me to pieces. "Because some doors are meant to stay closed," she said. "You'll understand when you're older." I tried to respect her rules, but the door haunted me. I would walk past it every morning on my way to the bathroom, and it always felt like something was standing on the other side, waiting. I could swear I heard faint scratching sometimes, or soft, rhythmic tapping that made the hair on my arms rise. By the time I turned 15, curiosity gnawed at me constantly. One night, when my mom and dad went to bed early and my younger brother Tyler was asleep, I crept down the hall with a bobby pin I'd swiped from the bathroom. My heart pounded as I bent over the brass knob, fiddling with the lock. I don't know what I expected. Dusty boxes, old furniture. But I was convinced that whatever my mother kept hidden was the answer to years of whispers and strange behavior. It took me nearly 20 minutes, but finally, with a soft click, the lock gave way. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Not dust, not mothballs. Something sour and rotten, like old meat left in the sun. I gagged, covering my nose, and stepped inside. The room was small, windowless, and lit only by the faint glow of the hallway behind me. But what I saw in that faint light stopped me cold. There was no sewing machine, no boxes, no furniture at all, just a single chair in the center of the room with thick leather straps bolted to its arms and legs. The walls were covered in deep scratches, some gouged so hard into the plaster that chunks had crumbled away. And on the floor, in the faint light, I could see stains, dark, old, and unmistakable. Blood. I froze, my mind spinning. What the hell was this room? Why did my mother keep it locked? Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned, and my stomach dropped. My mother was standing in the doorway. Her face was unreadable in the shadows, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity I'd never seen before. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward, slowly, her bare feet silent against the wood. "I told you not to open it," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with anger. "Mom," I stammered. "What is this place? What is this chair?" She didn't answer. She stepped past me, into the room, and touched the chair with a kind of reverence, her fingers tracing the straps. "This is where I kept her," she said softly. My blood ran cold. "Kept who?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, glinting with something I couldn't name. "My mother, your grandmother. She wasn't like other people. She had urges, darkness. She hurt people. She hurt me." I swallowed hard. "So you locked her in here?" She shook her head slowly, almost tenderly. "No, Jacob. She never left this room, not after I was old enough to keep her in it. She died here." My stomach churned. "Then why is it still locked?" Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Because death doesn't always mean gone." The air grew colder. I shivered, suddenly desperate to get out of the room. But before I could move, my mother grabbed my arm, her nails biting into my skin. Her face was inches from mine now, her breath hot and sour. "She talks to me, Jacob," she whispered. "Every night. She tells me secrets. She tells me things only a mother could know, and she tells me you're just like her." I pulled away, shaking. "That's insane. There's no one here. She's dead." My mother's eyes darkened. "Dead doesn't mean quiet." Before I could respond, a sound echoed through the room, a low, rasping breath. I froze. My mother smiled. "Do you hear her?" she whispered. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, that my mind was playing tricks, but then the chair creaked. Slowly, the leather straps shifted, pulled taut by nothing visible, and from the corner of the room came a whisper, dry, cracked, unmistakably female. "Jacob." I bolted for the door, but my mother grabbed me, her strength shocking. "She wants to meet you," she hissed. "She says you belong to her." I shoved her with everything I had, breaking free, and tore down the hall. My mother didn't chase me. She just stood there in the doorway, smiling as the shadows swallowed her. That night I locked myself in my bedroom, but I couldn't sleep. I could hear her in the hall, whispering through the door. Sometimes it was my mother's voice. Sometimes, horribly, it was another voice layered beneath it. Older, rougher. By morning, the door to the locked room was bolted again. My father acted like nothing had happened, like he didn't know a thing. When I confronted him, he just shook his head, his face pale. "Don't bring it up," he said. "If you do, she'll only get worse." But it did get worse. Over the following weeks, my mother spent more and more time in that room. I would hear her talking for hours, her voice rising and falling in conversation with someone who couldn't possibly be there. Sometimes I swore I heard two voices answering back. Then one night she came into my room, her eyes wide, her smile stretched too far. She carried the old leather straps in her hands. "It's your turn," she whispered. "She says it has to be you now. You're the blood she's been waiting for." I screamed, and that was enough to wake Tyler. He burst into the hallway, rubbing his eyes, and my mother's expression changed instantly. She dropped the straps, rushing to him, hugging him too tightly, muttering about how she would keep him safe this time. I grabbed Tyler's hand and dragged him into my room, slamming the door. We stayed awake until dawn, listening as she paced outside, whispering to herself, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. My father finally moved us out a week later, after he found her sitting in the locked room, cradling the chair like a child, humming lullabies to the empty air. He never explained, never told us the full truth, but I can still see the look in his eyes when he nailed the door shut one last time before we left. It wasn't anger. It was relief. To this day, I don't know if my grandmother really died in that room, or if she's still in there somehow, waiting. All I know is that my mother was never the same after she started listening to the whispers behind that door, and sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I can still hear it myself. The soft scrape of nails against wood, coming from nowhere. My mother never let me go through her things. She was protective of her space, especially her nightstand drawer where she kept a small, worn red leather diary. From the time I was old enough to notice it, she told me the same thing whenever my eyes lingered on it too long. "That book isn't for you, Jacob. Don't ever open it." When I was little, I thought it was her journal, maybe filled with memories, recipes, or embarrassing stories she didn't want anyone to read. But as I got older, her obsession with keeping it hidden grew stranger. If she left the room, she would carry it with her. Sometimes at night I would hear the faint scratch of her pen, like she was writing furiously in the dark. And once, when I passed by her door, I could have sworn I heard her whispering to the book as if it were a person. By 16, curiosity gnawed at me more than fear. I knew it was wrong, but one night when she went out for errands and Dad was working late, I crept into her room. My heart raced as I pulled the drawer open. There it was, the red diary. The leather was cracked, the edges frayed, but something about it looked alive, like skin stretched too tight. I hesitated, then flipped it open. The first page wasn't filled with words like I expected, but with names. Dozens of names written in my mother's tight, jagged handwriting. Some had dates next to them. Some were crossed out. At first, I thought it was a list of family members, but I didn't recognize most of the names. As I flipped further, the entries grew more disturbing. The writing became erratic, letters scratched deep into the paper, phrases repeated over and over. The blood binds. He is hungry. The children must obey. My stomach turned as I read one entry dated the year I was born. Jacob is mine. He is promised. When he turns 16, the debt will be paid. My chest tightened. My hands trembled as I flipped further, and then I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was a drawing, crude but unmistakable. A figure with horns towering over a woman kneeling with a child in her arms. Written beneath it, in my mother's handwriting, were the words, "I gave him life, so I owe him life." The sound of the front door slamming shut jolted me out of my trance. My mother was home. I panicked, shoving the diary back into the drawer and sprinting to my room. My heart hammered as I sat on my bed, trying to calm down. Minutes later, my door creaked open. She stood in the doorway, holding the diary. Her eyes were darker than I had ever seen them, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You read it," she said softly. Not a question, a statement. I tried to deny it, but she shook her head. "Don't lie, I can feel it. The book knows." I swallowed hard. "What does it mean, Mom? What debt? Who are those names?" She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. For a moment I thought she would yell, but instead she sat on the edge of my bed and placed the diary in her lap. Her hands trembled as she stroked its cover. "When I was your age," she began, her voice hollow, "I was desperate. My own mother was cruel, your grandfather was gone, and I wanted someone, anyone, to protect me. One night I found this book in the attic. It was already full of names, already alive, and when I wrote my name in it, he answered." I shivered. "Who answered?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, glistening. "The one who lives in the red, the one who keeps us safe if we feed him. He gave me everything I asked for, love, children, a home. But nothing is free. Every gift has a price." I felt sick. "What kind of price?" She opened the diary to the page with my name. Her finger traced the words. "I promised him my firstborn." The room spun. My stomach lurched. I wanted to scream, to deny what I had heard, but her expression told me she believed it with every fiber of her being. "I won't let him take you," she whispered suddenly, clutching my hand. "I've kept him at bay all these years. I've given him others instead." I froze. "Others." Her lips quivered. "Strangers. People no one would miss. That's what the names are. Every time I fed him, he left you alone." My blood turned to ice. All those names, those dates, they weren't just entries. They were victims. My mother had been feeding something real. I yanked my hand away, my chest heaving. "You're insane," I choked out. "You killed people?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I did it for you. Don't you understand? For you and Tyler, to keep you safe. But now it's different. You're 16. He's growing impatient. He won't wait any longer." Before I could react, the candle on her nightstand flickered to life. No one had touched it. A thick, metallic smell filled the air, like blood. The diary pulsed in her lap, its leather cover twitching as if something beneath the skin wanted out. My mother's eyes widened, her voice breaking. "He's here." The pages of the diary flipped on their own, stopping on a blank one. A long, jagged line carved itself into the paper, like an invisible pen was writing. Slowly, letters formed. "Jacob." My breath caught. My mother clutched the book to her chest, sobbing. "Please take me instead," she begged the empty air. "Not him. Take me." But the writing continued. The debt is due." The candle's flame roared higher, nearly touching the ceiling. Shadows twisted on the walls, forming shapes with horns and clawed hands. I bolted, shoving past my mother, sprinting into the hallway. The air felt thick, heavy, every breath like swallowing iron. Behind me, she screamed my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't stop until I burst out of the house into the cold night air. I ran until my lungs burned, until the only sound was my own ragged breathing. When I finally returned at dawn, the house was silent. My father was gone, Tyler still asleep. My mother sat at the kitchen table, the red diary open in front of her. Her eyes were empty, her face streaked with dried tears. When she looked at me, her voice was flat. I convinced him. He gave me more time, but not forever. She never explained what she did that night or how. All I know is that the diary never left her side again. She carried it everywhere, whispering to it, feeding it with her secrets. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear pages turning in the dark when no one is touching it. I never told anyone what I saw. I never opened the diary again. But every time I see that cracked red leather, I remember the page with my name written in her hand, waiting, and I wonder how long until the debt comes due again. I never understood why my mother kept the basement locked. Every house we lived in, whether rented or owned, she would find a way to lock the basement door. When I was little, she told me it was dangerous, that basements were where kids fell downstairs and broke their necks. But even then, something about the way she said it felt off. Her eyes would go cold, her mouth pressed tight, like she wasn't warning me about an accident, but guarding me from something worse. Growing up, it became a strange rule of the house. No one goes into the basement but Mom. Dad wasn't allowed. My younger sister wasn't allowed, and definitely not me. Whenever something needed to be stored, she would insist on carrying it down herself. Whenever we heard strange noises, like shifting boxes or faint scratching, she would tell us it was rats and change the subject. The older I got, the more suspicious it felt. By the time I was 16, I was old enough to question it. "What's really down there?" I asked her once. She didn't answer. She just froze, gripping the handle of the locked basement door so tight her knuckles went white. Then she said something I will never forget. "It's where I keep the things I can't let go of." I thought she meant old memories, junk she didn't want us to throw out. But one night, I found out what she really meant. It was a stormy evening, the kind where the power flickers and the whole house feels alive. Mom had gone to her night shift at the hospital, Dad was working late, and my sister was asleep upstairs. I sat in the living room, scrolling on my phone, when I heard it. 3 distinct knocks from the basement door. I froze. The knocks weren't random. They were slow, deliberate. At first, I told myself it was the storm, maybe a tree branch hitting the siding. But then I heard it again, 3 knocks, louder this time from inside the basement. My heart pounded. Against my better judgment, I crept toward the door. The old brass lock gleamed faintly in the dark. I reached out, touching the knob, and felt a vibration like something was pressing against the other side. And then a voice whispered, "Help me." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't my mother's voice. It wasn't a voice I recognized at all. My first instinct was to run upstairs, but curiosity held me there. I grabbed a flashlight from the counter and shined it on the door. That's when I noticed it. Scratches. Dozens of them, etched into the wood around the lock, like fingernails had clawed at it for years, desperate to get out. I swallowed hard. With trembling hands, I fetched a paperclip from the drawer. I don't know what came over me. Fear, adrenaline, maybe the need to know the truth. But I picked the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a black void. The smell hit me first. Dampness, mold, and something metallic, like old blood. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the stairs. They weren't dusty like I expected. They were worn, as if someone walked them every day. I stepped down, my heart in my throat. The deeper I went, the colder it became. The air felt heavy, pressing against my skin. When I reached the bottom, I swung the flashlight around the room and nearly dropped it. It wasn't a storage space. It was a cell. The walls were lined with shelves, but instead of boxes or tools, they were filled with jars. Glass jars of different sizes, each containing something floating in murky liquid. I stepped closer, my stomach churning as the beam caught what was inside. Fingers, teeth, tufts of hair, tiny bones. Each jar carefully labeled with dates that went back years. My legs turned to jelly. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over something on the floor. When I turned the light down, I saw it. A small mattress, stained dark with what could only be blood. Chains bolted to the concrete. And then, in the far corner, someone moved. My heart nearly exploded. The beam landed on a figure, thin, pale, hunched over in the shadows. A woman. Her eyes snapped open, wide and glassy, and she scurried back like a frightened animal. Her wrists were raw, shackled by chains. "Help me," she croaked, her voice barely human. "Please, she'll come back soon." My mouth went dry. "Who?" Her eyes darted toward the ceiling. "Your mother." The world spun. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself this was a nightmare, but every detail screamed reality. The jars, the mattress, the chains, the woman. "I've been here for months," she whispered, clutching her knees. "She brings food, sometimes water, sometimes other things. She says she can't let me go, that if I leave, everything falls apart." My stomach lurched. My mother, the same woman who kissed me goodnight, who packed my lunches, who told me stories when I was little, was keeping a prisoner in our basement. Before I could respond, I heard the front door open upstairs. "Jacob," my mother's voice. Panic surged through me. The woman in the corner shook her head violently. "Don't tell her. Don't let her see you down here." I snapped off the flashlight and bolted up the stairs, shutting the basement door behind me just as her footsteps entered the hallway. "There you are," she said, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Power's out in half the neighborhood. Did you light a candle?" I forced a nod, my hands shaking. "Yeah, just waiting it out." Her eyes lingered on me a moment too long, as if she could smell my fear. Then she set down her bag and casually checked the lock on the basement door. Good. Still secure. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman's face, pale and broken in the flashlight beam. The next morning I confronted my father. I told him everything. He stared at me like I was insane, then sighed. "Jacob," he said carefully, "your mother, she's been through a lot. She doesn't always handle stress the way normal people do. Whatever you think you saw, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." But his eyes betrayed him. He knew. He'd always known. That evening, when Mom left for work again, I tried to go back down to the basement, but the lock had been changed. Heavy, industrial, impossible to pick with a paperclip. Weeks passed, then months. I never saw the woman again, but sometimes, late at night, I heard faint knocks from below. 3 at a time. Always 3. And sometimes, when I caught my mother staring at me across the dinner table, her eyes cold and calculating, I wondered how long it would be before I became one of the things she couldn't let go of. Because the truth I didn't want to face was simple. My mom didn't keep the basement locked to protect us from what was down there. She kept it locked to protect what was down there from us. My mom always said the family that eats together stays together. It sounded wholesome when I was a kid. But as I got older, the phrase carried a different weight. There was something obsessive about it, the way she forced us to sit down together every night no matter what. Dad couldn't work late. I couldn't study at a friend's house. My little sister couldn't nap through it. Dinner wasn't just dinner. It was a ritual. I thought it was just her being strict, maybe controlling. But then came the night everything changed, the night I learned what staying together meant to her. It started with the smell. Mom's cooking was always intense. Heavy spices, rich sauces, strange meats she claimed she'd picked up from a special butcher on the other side of town. That night, though, the smell was overwhelming, thick, cloying, metallic. It clung to the air like a damp cloth over my mouth and nose. We sat down at the table. Mom beamed, her eyes shining too bright, her hair pulled back so tight it seemed painful. Dad looked pale, withdrawn, but he didn't argue. My little sister fidgeted in her chair, eyeing the plate in front of her. "Eat," Mom said firmly, clasping her hands together. On each plate sat a slab of meat, glistening under the light. Not steak, not chicken, something darker, stringier. The smell made bile rise in my throat. "What is it?" I asked, pushing my fork into it. Mom's smile widened, stretching unnaturally. "Family food. Special food." I frowned. "Like venison?" She laughed. Not a normal laugh. A sharp, high-pitched sound that made my skin crawl. "Better than that, you'll see. Just eat." Dad picked up his fork with shaking hands and took a bite. His face contorted, but he chewed, forcing it down. My sister copied him hesitantly. I couldn't. The closer the fork got to my mouth, the worse the smell became. I set it down. "I'm not hungry." The room went dead silent. Mom's smile faded, and her eyes turned sharp as knives. "What did you say?" I swallowed hard. "I'm just not hungry." Her hand slammed the table so hard the silverware rattled. "You will eat what I put in front of you." My sister started crying quietly. Dad reached out, murmuring, "Honey, maybe he's just not feeling." Mom cut him off with a glare so fierce it shut him down instantly. Then she turned back to me, her voice low, vibrating with rage. "You don't disrespect the family table." My chest tightened. Something deep inside told me not to push her, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom, what is this? What are we eating?" For a moment, she just stared at me. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a smile again. "We're eating family. That's what keeps us together." My stomach dropped. I thought it was a sick joke, some twisted attempt at scaring me. But the way Dad lowered his eyes, the way his fork trembled in his hand, told me it wasn't a joke. I shoved my chair back, my pulse racing. "What the hell does that mean?" Her eyes gleamed. "It means when someone tries to leave us, they don't really leave. They stay at the table. Forever." She reached out suddenly, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. Her nails dug into my skin. "Eat," she whispered, her breath hot against my face. I yanked free and stood up. "No." The room erupted in chaos. My sister sobbed harder. Dad muttered something under his breath, and Mom's face twisted into something monstrous. Her lips peeled back from her teeth in a snarl, her eyes wide and shining with madness. "You think you can break this family apart?" she screamed. "You think you can just walk away? No one leaves this table." She lunged across the table, grabbing the knife from beside her plate. The blade gleamed under the light as she pointed it at me. Dad stood suddenly, blocking her path. "Enough," he shouted. His voice cracked, but he didn't move aside. For a tense moment, I thought she might actually stab him. Her chest heaved, the knife trembling in her hand. Then, slowly, she lowered it, her smile creeping back. "You're right," she said softly, almost sweetly. "Not tonight, but he'll eat eventually." She turned back to me, her eyes locking onto mine. "Because once you taste it, you'll understand. Blood binds us tighter than love ever could." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, the smell of the meat still clogging my nose, The image of my mother's wild eyes burned into my mind. Over the next few weeks, the dinners continued. Every night, the same meat. Every night, the same rule: eat or face her wrath. My sister ate without complaint, tears running down her cheeks. Dad ate mechanically, like a man already broken. I pushed the food around my plate, finding excuses, hiding scraps in napkins. But the longer it went on, the more I began to notice things. The cuts of meat were never the same. Some nights thick, some nights thin, sometimes shaped like parts I didn't want to recognize. And Mom? She would hum while she cooked, her voice sweet and content, like she was the happiest woman alive. The worst part came one night when I found a necklace in the trash. A silver locket I recognized. It belonged to my aunt, my mother's sister, who had supposedly moved away months ago without saying goodbye. That's when the truth hit me full force. Mom wasn't lying. She meant every word. We weren't eating beef. We weren't eating venison. We were eating them. The missing relatives. The ones who had drifted out of our lives without explanation. The neighbors who disappeared suddenly. All those whispered stories of people who moved away or cut contact. They hadn't left. They'd been brought back to the table. I wanted to tell someone, to scream the truth to the world. But every time I tried, Mom's words echoed in my head. Blood binds us tighter than love. And the way she looked at me across the table, her smile calm, her eyes cold, I knew she'd do anything to keep that bond, even if it meant I'd be next on the plate. Growing up, my mom always told me one rule that sounded simple. Never open the door at the end of the hallway. Our house was old, creaky, and drafty. The kind of place where doors sometimes shut themselves and floors groaned under your feet. I always thought the locked room was just an abandoned storage space, maybe filled with junk from before we moved in. As a child, I didn't question it, but as I grew, the mystery began to eat at me. Why was the door always locked? Why did Mum polish the knob as if it were sacred? And why did she flinch whenever I asked what was inside? It wasn't until my 15th birthday that the curiosity nearly killed me. That day, we didn't celebrate with cake or balloons. My mom wasn't the kind of mother who believed in parties. She believed in silence, obedience, and rules. So, after dinner, she gave me a thin smile and patted my shoulder. "You're old enough now," she said. "Old enough to understand." Her tone made my stomach twist. "Understand what?" "The locked room," she whispered. I froze. I joked about it with friends before, but I never thought she'd bring it up herself. My heart leapt with a mix of excitement and dread. "What's inside?" I asked. Her smile faltered. "You'll see. But not yet. Soon." And just like that, she turned away, leaving me with a storm of questions. That night I couldn't sleep. The hallway felt different, heavier, as if the locked door was pulling me toward it. The knob gleamed faintly under the moonlight streaming through the windows. I crept out of my room, bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Every step closer made my skin prickle. I half expected Mom to jump out of the shadows and scold me. When I reached the door, I crouched and peered at the keyhole. At first, all I saw was blackness, but then movement. Something shifted inside. Slow, deliberate. A shape too large to be furniture. My breath caught, and I stumbled backward, nearly tripping. The sound that followed froze me in place. A voice. Low, raspy, barely audible, but it was there. "Help me." My blood turned to ice. The next morning, I confronted Mom. "There's someone in that room," I blurted at breakfast. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Slowly, she set it down. "You didn't open the door, did you?" "No, but—" Her hand shot across the table, gripping mine with iron strength. Her nails dug into my skin. "You don't open that door? Ever?" Do you hear me?" Her eyes burned with a fury I'd never seen before. It was more than anger. It was fear. I nodded quickly, pulling my hand away. But inside, I knew one thing for certain. Someone was in that room. Someone who needed me. The whispers continued. Every night when the house was quiet, I heard faint scratching, muffled sobs, sometimes even screams choked into silence. I stuffed pillows over my ears, but the sounds bled through. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know the truth. So one afternoon, when Mom went into town for groceries, I searched the house. I tore through drawers, checked under cushions, even dug through her closet. At last, hidden in a shoebox beneath old clothes, I found it, a brass key, heavy and cold in my palm. My pulse hammered as I crept to the locked door. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but I shoved the key into the lock and turned. The click echoed down the hall like thunder. The smell hit me first. Rot, sweat, iron. I gagged, covering my nose as I pushed the door open. The room was dark, the curtains nailed shut. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, swaying gently. And in the corner, a figure. It was a woman. Her skin was pale, her hair matted and greasy, her wrists chained to the wall. She looked up at me with hollow eyes that shone with desperate relief. "You found me," she croaked. My chest tightened. "Who are you?" Her lips trembled. "I'm your sister." The words slammed into me like a fist. "That's impossible. I don't have a sister." "Yes, you do," she whispered, tugging at the chains. "She told you I died, but I didn't. She kept me here. All these years." My knees nearly gave out. 1,000 memories rushed back. Mom's strange rules, her refusal to let me in the room, the hushed conversations I wasn't meant to hear. She said you were sick," I stammered. The woman's eyes darkened. "I wasn't sick. She wanted me gone, because I knew her secret." "What secret?" Before she could answer, the front door slammed. Panic surged. Mom was home. I fumbled with the key, trying to lock the door again, but my hands shook too badly. Footsteps thundered down the hall, faster and faster. When she appeared in the doorway, her face was something I'll never forget. Her eyes went wide, her mouth stretched into a silent scream. For a moment, she looked like a cornered animal. Then her expression hardened into pure rage. "What did you do?" she hissed. I was just... You let her out." I spun around. The chains were empty. The woman was gone. "Where?" But Mom was already advancing on me, her face twisted, her voice rising to a shriek. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know what she is?" Her hand lashed out, gripping my arm with bruising force. "She's not your sister. She's the sickness, the evil I kept locked away to protect you." Her words tumbled out in a frenzy, her spittle flecking my face. "She whispers lies. She feeds on love. She destroys families. That's what she does." I shook my head violently. "No, you're lying. You're insane." Her eyes blazed. Better insane than consumed. And then, the whisper came, right in my ear. "Help me." I spun around. The woman was there again, standing in the shadows of the room. Her smile was sharp, too sharp. Her eyes gleamed unnaturally bright. "See?" Mom screamed. "Do you see her now?" The woman stretched her arms toward me. "She's the monster, not me. She locked me away because she couldn't control me." I staggered back, torn between them. Mom's face was wild with desperation. The woman's voice was honey smooth. My head spun. Who was telling the truth? The lights flickered. The bulb above us swung wildly, shadows crawling along the walls. The air grew heavy, choking as if the room itself was alive. Mom clutched my shoulders, shaking me. "Don't listen to her. She'll make you hate me, make you leave me. That's what she does." The woman laughed softly. Not the laugh of someone who'd suffered for years, but the laugh of someone who'd just won. Choose, she whispered. My body locked. My breath came shallow, and then everything went black. When I woke, I was in my bed. The morning sun streamed through the window. For a fleeting moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. But when I stumbled into the hallway, the locked door was gone. Just gone. The wall was smooth, seamless, as if it had never existed. I asked Mom about it once. She smiled, stroked my hair, and said, "There's no locked room, sweetheart. There never was. But sometimes at night I still hear the whispers. Help me. And I don't know if it's the sister who never was, or the monster my mother swore she kept locked away." My mother always smiled. Not the warm, loving kind of smile that makes you feel safe. Hers was different. Too wide, too practiced, as if she had carved it onto her face and couldn't take it off. Growing up, people used to tell me how lucky I was. "Your mom is so cheerful," they'd say. "She always has the brightest smile." But behind closed doors, I learned the truth. That smile wasn't joy. It was a mask. And sometimes, when the mask slipped, I saw what hid underneath. One night when I was 10, I caught her staring at herself in the mirror. Her grin stretched ear to ear, but her eyes were empty, glassy, as if she wasn't really there. She whispered to her reflection in a voice so low it didn't sound human. "Keep smiling. They can't know. Never let them know." When she noticed me in the doorway, her head snapped toward me, the smile never fading. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," she sang. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were sharp, dangerous. I ran. From that night on, I learned not to watch her too closely. The older I got, the more her smile unnerved me. She wore it during arguments, during funerals, even when I fell off my bike and split my knee open. While I cried, she pressed a handkerchief to the wound, her grin locked in place. "It doesn't hurt that bad," she cooed, tilting her head. "See? If you smile, it won't hurt at all." Her teeth glistened in the sunlight, perfect and white, like a predator baring its fangs. By the time I turned 16, my father had left us. Mom said he couldn't handle responsibility, that he was weak. But I remembered the night he left, how pale he looked, how his voice shook as he whispered, "Don't let her get to you too." He didn't say goodbye. He just slammed the door and never came back. After that, her smile grew wider. One evening, I invited my best friend Clara over to study. Mom greeted her at the door, beaming so brightly that Clara flinched. "What a lovely girl," Mom chimed, ushering her inside. "You have such a beautiful smile. Show it more often." Clara forced a polite grin. I could tell she was unsettled. That night, as we studied in my room, Clara leaned close and whispered, "Why does your mom smile like that? It's creepy." I shushed her quickly. "Don't say that where she can hear you." Clara frowned. "Why not?" "Because she doesn't like it when people talk about her smile," I whispered, and I meant it. Later that evening, as Clara went to the bathroom, I heard a faint murmur from the hallway. My blood ran cold. It was Mom's voice. "You don't smile enough, dear. Why don't you smile for me?" Then came Clara's nervous laugh. Okay?" Silence, followed by a muffled whimper. I bolted into the hallway. Clara stood frozen near the mirror, Mom's hand clamped tight on her shoulder. Her grin was so wide it looked painful. "Isn't she pretty when she smiles?" Mom asked me, tilting Clara's chin toward the mirror. Clara's lips trembled into a forced grin. Tears filled her eyes. "Let her go," I shouted. Mom's expression softened instantly. She released Clara and stepped back, still smiling. "Of course, darling. Just teaching her the family rule." Clara ran out of the house that night and never came back. I thought it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Weeks later, I woke to a strange sound. a soft, wet noise like someone gnawing on raw meat. Creeping downstairs, I found the kitchen bathed in moonlight. Mom sat at the table, her back to me, her jaw working furiously. On the plate before her was something dark, glistening. At first I thought it was raw meat, but when she turned slightly, I saw it, a severed piece of flesh, pale and unmistakably human. My stomach lurched. She chewed slowly, deliberately, and whispered to herself between bites. "Smile and they'll never know. Smile and they'll never leave." I must have gasped because she stopped mid-chew and looked over her shoulder. Her mouth was smeared red, her teeth stained. "Sweetheart," she said through her eternal grin. "Why are you awake?" I ran before she could finish. After that night, I avoided her as much as possible. I stayed late at school, hid in my room, pretended to sleep when she came to check on me. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape her smile. It followed me everywhere, reflected in mirrors, flickering in windows, lurking in the corners of my dreams, and sometimes I woke to find her standing in my doorway, grinning down at me in the dark. The breaking point came a month later. I returned home from school to find the house silent. Too silent. "Mom?" I called. No answer. I crept into the living room and froze. On the couch sat a body. My neighbor, Mrs. Wilson. Her eyes were wide open, her face twisted in horror, and her mouth? Her lips had been slashed open, cut ear to ear into a grotesque grin. Behind her, Mom stood with a knife, her own smile gleaming with fresh blood. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart," she said softly. She wasn't happy. I fixed it for her. Everyone should smile, always. I stumbled back, my throat tightening. With a scream, her smile widened further, impossibly wide until her cheeks split and bled. "You'll understand soon," she whispered, "because one day when I'm gone, you'll have to wear the smile too." That was the night I ran. I didn't pack a bag, didn't look back. I fled into the dark and never returned. To this day, I don't know what happened to her or to Mrs. Wilson's body. The police never found anything, but sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the mirror, I see something that chills me to the core, my mouth twitching upward, a grin stretching wider and wider, as though her smile is living inside me, waiting for the day it takes over completely. I always knew there was something strange about my mom's basement. Most kids were afraid of the dark, of monsters under the bed or shadows in the closet. But for me, it was the locked basement door. It was the one place in our house I was forbidden to go. "Never, ever go down there," Mom would warn, her voice sharp, but her smile never fading. "That's Mommy's special place." I didn't dare disobey, because when my mom smiled, it wasn't reassurance. It was a warning. The basement door was thick, painted red, with a heavy lock that clicked shut every evening at exactly 9 p.m. Sometimes I would wake in the middle of the night and hear noises drifting up through the floorboards. Low murmurs, scraping. Once, a scream so faint I thought I had dreamed it. When I asked her about it, she laughed softly. "Oh, sweetheart, you and your imagination. That's just the house settling." But I didn't believe her. By the time I turned 15, curiosity gnawed at me like a disease. One day, while Mom was out shopping, I searched her room for the basement key. I found it tucked inside a small box in her dresser, wrapped in a silk handkerchief. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The basement door groaned open. The air that rushed out was damp, sour, and tinged with something metallic. I descended the creaking stairs, each step heavier than the last. What I saw at the bottom made my stomach turn. The basement wasn't used for storage. No boxes, no tools, no clutter. Instead, the room was lined with cages. Rusty metal cages, some empty, some containing things. In one cage, a woman huddled in the corner, her clothes filthy and her skin bruised. She stared at me with wide, glassy eyes. "Help me," she whispered hoarsely. My breath caught. Another cage held a man, his hands trembling as he reached toward me through the bars. Please, don't let her see you down here. She'll kill us both. I stumbled back, my head spinning. That's when I noticed the far wall. It was covered in photographs, dozens of them, all of smiling faces. Some were my neighbors, some were strangers. All of them wore grotesque, exaggerated grins, slashed into their cheeks like permanent scars. And in the center, framed carefully, was a picture of me. My mouth had been crudely drawn into a wide smile with black marker. A noise made me spin around. Mom stood at the top of the stairs, her silhouette glowing in the dim light. The key still dangled from the lock. Sweetheart, she sang, her voice sugar-sweet. I told you not to come down here. Her smile was radiant, but her eyes were cold. I froze. What? What is this? She descended slowly, each step deliberate. These are Mommy's little secrets. These people, they weren't happy. They forgot how to smile, so I helped them. Her eyes gleamed as she gestured to the cages. And one day, if you stop smiling too, I'll help you as well. The woman in the cage whimpered. The man pressed his forehead against the bars, silent tears streaming down his face. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed. Mom took my hand, her grip iron strong. Don't look so afraid, darling. This is our family tradition. My mother taught me, and her mother taught her. We keep the world smiling, one person at a time. She led me past the cages, her grin unwavering. You'll understand when you're older. For now, promise me you'll never tell anyone what you saw. Her nails dug into my skin. Promise. I nodded, choking back tears. She released me, satisfied. Good girl. Now go upstairs. Dinner's ready. That night I lay awake in bed, my heart racing. I could still hear the faint cries from the basement. I wanted to call the police, to tell someone, anyone. But I knew what would happen if I did. Mom would smile, and then she would fix me. Weeks passed. I tried to pretend everything was normal. Mom cooked dinner, asked about school, tucked me into bed with her usual cheery grin. But I knew what was waiting below our feet. I could hear them crying at night. Sometimes, when the house was especially quiet, I could even hear her humming as she worked down there. One evening, she came upstairs carrying a tray. On it was a plate of cookies. Try one, she insisted, pushing the plate toward me. I hesitated. Her smile sharpened. I bit into the cookie. It tasted wrong, metallic, salty. My stomach churned. She clapped her hands in delight. Do you like it? It's a family recipe. Very special. I didn't ask what was in it. I didn't want to know. The final straw came the night she decided to show me her work. Sweetheart, she called from the bottom of the stairs. Come down. Mommy has a surprise for you. My legs shook as I descended. In the center of the basement, one of the cages was open. Inside, a young girl about my age sat trembling. Mom handed me a knife. It's time you learned. She doesn't smile enough. You need to fix it. The girl's wide eyes locked on mine. She shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, she whispered. I stood frozen, the knife heavy in my hand. Mom leaned close, her smile so wide it split her lips. Do it, sweetheart, or I'll have to fix you instead. I don't remember deciding to run. One moment, I was standing there, the knife trembling in my grip. The next, I was bolting up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. Mom screamed below, her voice shrill and furious. Come back here. You're one of us. You'll smile too. I ran out of the house barefoot, into the night, and didn't stop until I reached the police station. When I told them what I saw, they didn't believe me at first, but when they raided the house, the truth came out. The cages, the bodies, the photographs, the victims who were still alive. Mom didn't resist. She just smiled as they led her away in handcuffs, blood still staining her hands. "You'll thank me someday," she called out, her voice echoing. "One day, you'll carry on the tradition. It's in your blood." That was 3 years ago. She's in a psychiatric facility now, locked away where she can't hurt anyone. But sometimes, late at night, I hear her voice in my head. "Smile, sweetheart. Smile, and they'll never know." And when I look in the mirror, I swear. I can see her grin staring back at me. I grew up in a small town where nothing exciting ever happened. Neighbors waved at each other, doors were left unlocked, and kids played outside until the streetlights flickered on. But behind the walls of my own home, something darker was growing. Something I never understood until it was too late. My mom always said she had a gift. When I was a child, I thought that meant she was special. Maybe psychic, maybe just extra smart. But as I got older, I realized her gift wasn't a blessing. It was the thing that tore our family apart. It started with whispers. I'd wake up late at night and hear her pacing the hallway, mumbling softly to herself. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but when I asked her the next morning, she smiled with that unsettling calmness of hers. "Oh, sweetheart, Mommy just has friends who like to talk to her at night. They're very wise, you know. They tell me things other people can't hear." Her eyes glittered as if it were something beautiful. I didn't argue, but a chill settled deep in my stomach. As the years went on, the voices got louder. She would sit at the dinner table, nodding along to empty air, pausing as if she were listening to a story I couldn't hear. Sometimes she laughed, sometimes she cried, and sometimes she would glare at me with sudden, sharp intensity, like something one of the voices had said made her angry. By the time I was 12, Dad had had enough. I remember one night clearly. He slammed his fist on the table. "Stop this nonsense, Anna. You're scaring the kids." But Mom just tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Don't raise your voice at me, or they'll hear. You don't want to upset them." "Who, Anna? Who the hell are you talking about?" She leaned closer, whispering. "The mothers. They speak to me. They guide me. You wouldn't understand." That was the night Dad started sleeping on the couch. Things escalated quickly. We weren't allowed to have friends over anymore. Mom said the voices didn't like strangers. The curtains stayed closed all day long. And every mirror in the house was covered with black cloth because she said the mothers don't like to be watched. The worst part? She started keeping journals. Dozens of notebooks filled with messy handwriting, page after page of conversations she had with the voices. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sneak into her room and flip through them. One phrase appeared over and over again. "Blood is the key. Sacrifice keeps them pleased." The first real sign of danger came one morning when I woke up to find the family cat missing. Mom stood in the kitchen, her apron stained red. She smiled at me gently. "Don't worry, sweetheart. The mothers are pleased. They'll keep us safe now." I wanted to scream, but fear glued my throat shut. Dad confronted her that evening, but she just laughed. "It was necessary. They told me. They always know best." That night I heard them arguing in the living room. Then a crash. Then silence. The next morning, Dad was gone. Mom told me he left because he didn't believe. Life after that spiraled into something unrecognizable. She quit her job, saying the mothers wanted her at home full-time. She stopped cooking normal meals and instead made strange stews that smelled of herbs and copper. Sometimes she forced me to eat, watching intently as I swallowed. "They want you strong," she'd whisper. "You're special too. You'll carry on after me." I began to fear her more than I feared the voices she claimed followed her. The breaking point came on my 17th birthday. I woke up to find the house dark, every window sealed with heavy black fabric. Candles burned in every corner of the living room, wax dripping onto the carpet. Mom stood in the center, wearing a white dress stained with something brownish red. Her eyes shone wild in the candlelight. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said sweetly. "Today is the day, the mothers told me." She held a knife in her hand. My blood turned to ice. "The day for what?" Her smile widened. "The day you join them, the day you become one of us." Before I could react, she lunged forward, gripping my wrist with terrifying strength. She dragged me toward the living room floor, where she had drawn a massive circle in chalk and ash. Strange symbols filled the space inside. I struggled, but she was stronger than she looked. "Stop it, Mom, please." "Don't fight it, darling," she cooed, her voice trembling with manic devotion. "The mothers demand a gift. Just one drop of your blood will open the door. They'll finally come through, and we'll be a family again." She pressed the knife against my palm. I thrashed wildly, kicking at her until I managed to break free. She stumbled, the knife clattering across the floor. I didn't hesitate. I ran. She chased me through the house, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood. Her laughter echoed off the walls. "You can't run from them. You belong to them too." I bolted into the kitchen, slamming the door behind me and locking it. Her fists pounded against the wood, her voice breaking into sobs. "Don't you love me? Don't you want to be with me forever?" I pressed my back against the door, tears blurring my vision. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. When the police arrived, they had to drag her away, kicking and screaming. She bit one of the officers, shrieking that they were stealing her daughter from her. Mom was taken to a psychiatric facility. The doctors said she was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, that the voices were hallucinations fueled by delusion. But even now, I'm not convinced it was all in her head. Because sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I hear whispers too. Faint, soft, like a chorus of mothers calling from far away. And every time I feel her smile in the dark. When I was little, my mom had one strict rule that none of us dared to question. Never go into the locked room at the end of the hall. It was the only door in the house that was always shut. Heavy padlock, thick bolts, curtains nailed over the outside so no light could get in. Whenever I asked her why, she would smile too sweetly and stroke my hair. "Because, darling," she'd say, "some doors aren't meant to be opened." At 7 years old, that answer was enough. But as I grew older, curiosity dug its claws deeper into me. I'd catch Mom lingering by the locked door late at night, her hand resting on the knob, whispering softly as though someone on the other side could hear her. Sometimes I heard her laugh. Other times, cry. The scariest was when she didn't whisper at all, but simply stood there for hours, head tilted, listening. When I asked her once what was in there, her face changed. Her eyes went cold. "Never ask me that again," she said sharply. That was the first time I realized. My mother wasn't like other mothers. Dad was never in the picture. He left before I was born, at least that's what Mom told me. She never gave details. Any time I brought him up, she'd twist her lips and mutter, he didn't have the strength. He couldn't handle what we were. What we were. I didn't understand then, but I would. The older I got, the more Mom's behavior spiraled into obsession. She filled the house with religious relics, old books written in languages I couldn't read, jars filled with herbs, oils, and sometimes things I didn't want to identify. She had rituals, nights where she burned candles in a circle, chanting words that made my skin crawl. She claimed she was protecting us, keeping us safe from what's inside. When I asked her why we didn't just move away, she shook her head violently. "You can't escape blood, darling. The room is ours. It always will be." On my 15th birthday, she gave me a strange gift. A key, but not the key. This one was small, made of black iron, strung on a chain. She slipped it around my neck and kissed my forehead. "Someday you'll understand," she whispered. "Someday it'll be your turn to keep watch." I didn't know what she meant, not until the night I broke the rule. It happened on a stormy evening. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rolled so loud the walls shook. Mom had fallen asleep in the living room, her journals spread open around her. And the locked door was open, just a crack. I should have run the other way. But curiosity, that burning itch I'd carried for years, finally consumed me. I pushed the door wider. The smell hit me first, damp, metallic, like rust mixed with rot. Inside, the room was pitch black except for one flickering candle, and in the center of the floor was a crib. A crib, covered in dust, too small for me but clearly once used. My stomach twisted. That's when I heard it. A faint cry, not from the crib but from the far corner of the room. I turned, heart pounding, and there, chained to the wall, was a figure. It looked like a woman, her skin pale, her hair matted and greasy. She lifted her head slowly and her eyes locked on mine. "Help! Me!" she rasped. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping. Before I could speak, before I could even breathe, Mom's voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing in here?" She was standing in the doorway, her face a mask of fury. I stammered, pointing toward the woman. "Mom, who is that?" Mom's expression twisted into something dark. "That is none of your concern." She asked for help," I cried, panicked. Mom's voice turned sharp, commanding. "She is not who you think she is. She is a danger to us. Do not speak to her again." I shook my head in disbelief. You've been keeping someone locked in here." Her eyes flashed. "Don't you dare question me. Everything I do is for you." She slammed the door, locking it tight. The last thing I heard was the woman's muffled sob. After that night, things got worse. Mom no longer whispered to the locked room. She shouted, hours of screaming arguments with someone who never replied. She stopped eating. Her skin grew sallow, her eyes sunken. She'd sit in the kitchen, staring at me, and whisper, "You're not ready yet." But soon, I couldn't take it anymore. One night, when she finally passed out, I stole the keys from her dresser. Hands shaking, I unlocked the door again. The woman was still there, weaker now, her wrists bloody from struggling against the chains. "Please," she whispered, "she's not your mother. She took me. She replaced me." The world tilted beneath me. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. Tears streaked her dirty face. "I'm your mother. She's not who she says she is." I didn't believe her. I couldn't. But then she said my name. My real name. Not the nickname Mom always used, but the full one. One I had never told anyone. "How do you know that?" I demanded. Her voice cracked. "Because I gave it to you." Behind me, the door creaked. I spun around, and there she was. Mom. Or the woman I thought was Mom. Her face was twisted in rage, but beneath it, I saw something else. A flicker, a shadow moving under her skin, like something inside was struggling to stay hidden. "You weren't supposed to know," she hissed. "Not yet." She stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly in the candlelight. "She's lying. She wants to take you away from me. Don't you see? You're mine. You've always been mine." I froze, torn between two horrors. The chained woman sobbing, claiming to be my real mother, and the figure before me, smiling with teeth just a little too sharp. "Choose," she whispered. "Me or her." The air grew thick. The walls seemed to pulse. Whispers filled the room, hundreds of voices, chanting, urging me to decide. I don't remember exactly what happened next. I remember grabbing the chain. I remember the padlock snapping open somehow, though I never had the key. I remember pulling the woman free, and I remember the scream, not from her, from Mom. The sound tore through the house, shaking the walls. She collapsed, her skin rippling, peeling away like paper in fire until there was nothing left but smoke. The whispers died. The room went silent. The woman, my real mother, her collapsed in my arms, sobbing. We left that house that night, never looked back. But even now, years later, when I close my eyes, I see her face. The woman I called Mom, and sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I hear her voice whispering through the walls. "You're still mine.